Two. All right, just give it a minute for everybody to join in. We'll get started here. We have some good things going on today. All right. All right, we will get started here. Looks like the live is ready to go. We've got some great things we're going to be talking about today. Hello, welcome, welcome. Welcome everyone. So for those of you who are joining, this is your first time, my name is Tina. I am a happiness coach. I'm also an artist, and you can see some of my art that I've posted on TikTok and Facebook, and you can purchase some of the prints on various formats. Blankets, t-shirts, skirts, leggings, that kind of stuff, a journal. You can purchase those on Redbubble. The links are in my bio, so you can go ahead and take a look at those. So welcome everyone. So we've got some great topics that we are going to cover today. We're going to talk... there's my cat Felix. He waits. It doesn't matter what time. He waits till I come on here. Oh... And today has been one of those days, so we're going to talk about things that trigger us and environments and circumstances that can potentially aggravate our susceptibility to those triggers. So, very good topic tonight. I like to keep it real. This is stuff that I actually practice. I share my experience, strength, and hope and these are tools that I actually use on a daily basis to help me deal with some of the past traumas that I've been through, dealing with just general day-to-day life, and to allow my life to be happier. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So negative voices and the things that aggravate those things. So one surefire way to ensure that you're easily irritated by things and therefore more unhappy is to not have enough sleep, which is exactly what I did. But I was also pushing through to make sure I got some things done. So it's a bit of a balancing act. I need to... However, I missed the mark in what I wanted to be able to do. So balancing act of I sacrificed a little bit of sleep so that I could have that knowing that I completed the things that I wanted to do. They were delayed. I could have done them earlier, but I was trying to balance some other things at those times. So as we go through life, we're always going to have to juggle things because there's going to be certain things that come up in our day-to-day life that we don't have control of. We didn't anticipate, we didn't expect these things to happen, but we still have to manage them, right? So as we're going through this, we can end up, making better choices over others, and sometimes we don't actually make the best choices, right? So, or in hindsight, we find out, yeah, you know what, I probably should have got a little bit more sleep, and then I wouldn't have been as tired, but I was still proud of myself because I got up earlier, I was showered, out the door, and I went to a meetup, which last time when I woke up late, I didn't actually go. So this is progress. So I actually went today. So now, when I think about, thank you for the comment on the glasses. I like these ones too. I like the color, it suits me. So when we're thinking of the things that can affect us, so sleep can be one, being hungry can be another one. I like to go over the concept of HALT: hungry, angry, lonely, tired. For any of those things, that is a signal for us to halt our reactions. It doesn't mean that our feelings aren't valid. It just means that we're more susceptible to a negative reaction that could cause more damage and consequence than if we allow a buffer, a delay between what we feel and what we act on, it can help mitigate a lot of damage control, right? It can prevent a lot of stuff that you may have to clean up afterwards. And an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So we want to make sure that we try to avoid contributing to our own problems and therefore making our own lives unhappy because we're not doing things that are good for us, right? So Now, when you recognize these things, maybe you don't recognize it right away, like, because I didn't feel so tired, but I noticed that there was a comment was made and I was more sensitive. And I was like, and I thought it was okay because logically I'm like, oh, okay, it didn't really mean that much. But then what ends up happening is, you'll hear the whispers. Okay, and when I talk about the whispers, I'm not talking like I'm schizophrenic. Not that if you struggle with that or you have that illness, that's fine. Um, you know, when you hear the voice in your head that's like, oh shit, they're way better than me. I could never do it like that. Or maybe I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, maybe I shouldn't do this. Does what I do even matter? Like, you start doubting yourself, and that is the first sign. Hey, Stacy, welcome, welcome. So that is the first sign. Doubt is fear, and that is, in spiritual terms, the devil's greatest tool is doubt. Just planting seeds of doubt and seeing what we allow to blossom. A seed can't actually hurt us, but if we allow it to take root within us, that's where it really causes problems. So being able to recognize where we tend to be more distracted, we allow that fear to take root in us, and then fear is eventually we'll get to the point where we will cry out for love because fear is an illusion. Love is the only thing that is real. Everything is either an expression of love or a cry for love. So if we allow fear and doubt to take root in our minds, in our hearts, then eventually we will act out in fear and lash out in fear. And that's usually when we hurt other people. So this is why it's important to understand that fear is an illusion. So as I was going through the situation, and the person wasn't even making a comment at me, but comparison is the killer of all joy. So I was comparing and I was feeling doubtful, and I had this whole little conversation going on in my head of like, what? Am I doing the right thing? Oh, I can't do that. Maybe I don't know enough about this. Maybe I should study some more. Maybe I should do this thing. Maybe I should do that thing. And I had to like kind of stop myself and go, no, you're just tired. That's all. Recognizing that it's no different than if you have a child, right? And the child is normally fine, they're happy, they're fun, they're bubbly. But today they're just like, you give them their favorite toy, their favorite drink or something, and they're like, no, right? They don't want it. It's like, I know there was a post that I saw on TikTok about a parent saying, hey, here's the things that traumatized my child today. And it's like, the water was too wet. It's irrational stuff. It's, those kind of things. And it makes me think of when I get like that, how am I acting like the water is too wet? And even as an adult, these kind of things end up happening for us. So it's a matter of understanding, okay, these are my negative voices. Some of that is conditioned from the past. Some of that we take over where our abusers leave off, and we continue that narrative. And that continues to play in our head until we start learning to recognize it, first of all, and then stop it the next thing. Okay? And replace it with something that actually helps us and serves us and gets us on the right path. So the first step is recognizing what are our triggers? What are the things where we are more susceptible to fear and negative behavior, negative comments, snide remarks? Because you know what? When I am in a good space, somebody can say something absolutely ridiculous to me and they're deliberately trying to be mean. They're trying to get a rise out of me. And it has zero effect. Somebody can say something nice to me and I'll be like, what do you mean by that? Like, are you trying to get at me? And I'll be defensive. And that's number one. So if I start getting defensive about something, that is a fear trigger, and I need to pull back and go, okay, what's going on here? Why do I feel like I'm being attacked? Because there are times when people are deliberately trying to attack me and I'm like, yeah, fuck off, whatever. It's like no big deal. So what's the common denominator here? It's me and my reaction and what's going on internally within me and what kind of conditions are happening within me. So when I first started going through this and started learning about this stuff, it was a lot of trial and error. I'm not going to lie. It was a lot of trial and error of catching myself going through these various triggers. And, I usually would react badly. I'm not going to lie. I'd react badly and I'd have to kind of go back and go, okay, so what happened? And I would start to diagnose the whole situation and pinpoint exactly what happened beforehand. And I found what had always happened, that there was always a deciding point where I chose to give in, where I said, fuck it, you know what? I don't care. And I'd just go after it and then I'd regret it. So knowing that there is a deciding point, there is this deciding point before you actually take that action. And when you recognize that pattern within yourself, it becomes very easy to take accountability for all your actions. And without blaming yourself, you're like, no, you know what? I was tired. That guy at work yelled at me, and I went and sent this email to somebody, and I blasted them because I had enough, right? And it's like, and you're a little too terse, you're a little too nasty, or you're passive aggressive, however it is that you express your anger. But that somebody else may miss it. They may not even see it as an issue, right? There's been many times where I think I'm being vicious and they're like, you set like a bare minimum boundary. But to me, I'm like, oh, I'm a lion. They're like, no, you're a sweet little kitten is what you are, right? So there's perceptions too that come into play. So what I think is fine, and I think I'm maybe being very fair and very direct, and somebody else I'm dealing with is much more sensitive to me and they become reactive. So this can work both ways. When we recognize it on our side, we're less prone to react, and we're also more prone to be compassionate with other people when they start to act out of turn, right? So taking the time, if you do mess up and you're like, oh shit, I didn't handle that the best, I'm really angry about something, I'm really upset about how this person treated me, all that kind of stuff. At some point there was a decision. So we have to find our tripwire of what tripped us off beforehand. So I know to recognize that when I'm tired and I get that defensive, comparing, the negative voices going, oh, you don't really know what you're doing. You don't, because somebody can tell me, oh, you don't really know what you're doing. I'd be like, when I actually do and I feel that true in my heart, I'm like, yeah, let's go. Here you go. And I just list all that stuff out. But even if I do know everything, if I'm not in a good space and somebody says that to me and I'm like, oh, I believe that, then I start to doubt, then I start to fear, then I start to behave in a way that is in alignment with that belief, even if it's a temporary one that is induced because I did not get enough sleep, or I'm hungry, or I'm upset and I haven't taken the time to figure out why I'm upset about something. So know what your triggers are, what makes you more susceptible to what I like to call is borrowing trouble, right? It could be, so when I'm tired, I tend to borrow trouble from the future, which is anxiety, right? So I will be anxious about certain things that might not come up for a month or 6 months or 2 years, right? Something crazy that isn't in my current reality. What I do today or tomorrow may or may not actually impact whether or not that happens. So understanding what makes me more susceptible to borrowing trouble, and that is my anxious feeling of, well, what if this happens and what if that happens? And a lot of times the stuff that I've worried about happening, when it actually happens, is no big deal. And then usually there's something that I didn't plan for, couldn't have possibly thought of or imagined, and I still managed to get through it. It's like, well, shit, I didn't see that coming, but I still managed to get through it. I'm here today, right? So being aware of our own energy, our own triggers, and then when we do mess up, it's really important to go back and reevaluate. That's great. I'm glad you can amuse yourself, Mike. I too laugh at my own farts, especially when they're extra loud, right? Do you get like the trumpet ones or like the silent but deadly that you have to run away from your own ones? That's terrible. Okay. So, but thanks for your input. Okay. So the next thing that you want to do is, like, you could end up going through something where you are. Have you ever been in a room, like, that the people don't actually like you? You can feel that energy and you're like, wow, this motherfucker doesn't actually like me. And you can feel that and you're like, but I didn't actually do anything that would warrant that. So what's their problem, right? When you're in a good space, you can think that way and you'd be like, okay, this doesn't have to do anything with me. I just showed up. But you feel this energy and you feel this judgment coming on you. And whether or not you take that on has a lot to do with your own energy and what's going on with you. See, another one of my trigger warnings is I'm easily, when my auditory responses go up, like noises become really, really loud. It's like the volume gets turned up to 15 and then like I can hear my own heartbeat and I find it annoying. So that's probably an autistic thing, but I don't know if anybody else experiences that, but I know those kind of things. And I become aware of it, hyper aware of certain things that are grating on your nerves, right? So being aware of those kind of things makes you understand, okay, I need to really put action plans in place and double down on making sure I don't react to things and I actually stop and think things through, because if I rely on my emotions at this time, things will not go well. So understanding what is the narrative. So my first step is observe the narrative that is going on in your mind. What is your head telling you? What are the things that are going on? Because we will start to develop those as beliefs and we will start creating actions to align with those. So we have to assess and evaluate the merits of whether or not are those true or are they false? Is it a yes or is it a no? Is it good or is it bad? And this stuff can happen like split second timing. This happens all the time without us even knowing it. So when we slow ourselves down and we start to actually look at these things, it allows us to make different decisions. And especially when we're first becoming aware of these kind of things, that's when we have to decide if that, what, am I gonna go down this? Or like, maybe they are right. Maybe I do suck at this. Maybe I am terrible at this. Maybe I shouldn't do this. Should, never, those are good indicators that you're in a fear state. So, and you're trying to control an outcome, or somebody is trying to control an outcome with you and they're in a fear state. We have the ability to decide whether or not we're going to go down that path of fear with them or we choose a different path. And when whatever we choose, if we choose the fear path, we might blow up in anger, we might retaliate, we might get angry or aggressive, or we might get depressed and feel like, oh yeah, you know what, I'm not good enough. I can't do this. and we start to believe it, and then we start to align our actions with those beliefs. So if we find that we are acting out of alignment with what we said that we wanted to do, it's oftentimes because we've gone through this process of where we've observed, we've assessed something, either something external that somebody has said to us, or even our own mind can trigger us with this, of especially when we're trying to make changes, and especially if we're trying to make a big change that is hugely outside of our comfort zone. That will cause like a snapback, that it'll pull us back into our old behaviors, going, are you sure you really want to jump off this here cliff? Like, it looks pretty far down there. And we'll try to talk ourselves out of doing the things that we know that when we were in a good space, we set this intention and we said, no, this is the direction I want to move. And it's kind of like, getting to every stoplight and you're like, should I turn around and just go back? Like, maybe I shouldn't go on this trip. Maybe I shouldn't do this thing. And so we have to determine, are we at a stoplight where we're making a decision where we continue to go forward or we decide to go back? And sometimes the right decision is to go back. That, oh shit, you know what? When I made this decision to go this way, I was actually making it out of fear and I was running from something, right? And now I have to make the decision, okay, I need to pivot. I need to change. I need to do something different because when I made this decision, I was doing it because I thought this was what everybody else wanted rather than what I wanted. Or I was doing this because I didn't know how to say no at the time, right? So it's like, I couldn't say no, so I just said yes, but I didn't really mean the yes, and now I'm kind of stuck in this, and if you're a people pleaser, that kind of shit happens all the fucking time. So I don't know about you guys, but that definitely has happened with me. So catching myself going, okay, what was going on beforehand? Where was my tripwire? Where did I get tripped up where I said yes? And how I started to correct that behavior. Hey, Peter, welcome back. So how I started to correct that behavior is when I recognized, you know what? I said yes in a situation that if I wasn't worried about what the other person thought, I would have actually said no. So I had to start forcing myself to kind of go back, and I had to backpedal on stuff. And that really sucks because this is where hierarchy of values starts coming in. We have certain beliefs and values. I believe in, keep following through on my promises. And yet in those circumstances, in order for me to heal, in order for me to start to recover and to stop saying yes when I actually wanted to say no, is I actually had to start breaking my word, and I had to go back and say, no, you know what? I can't actually do the thing that I said I was going to do, and people would have their little snippets about it or whatever, but I would have to do that because I hated breaking my promise so much that the next time I went to go automatically say yes, I hesitated. I'd be like, I'm going to end up having to go back and say, you know what, I can't do this if I say yes again. So this is the value of going back. And so although I have a value of following through on my promises, there will be times where you actually have to go against those certain values that you have in order to prevent you from getting tripped up on that tripwire again. Does that make sense? And so, example, you have a belief that, it's important to tell the truth and to be open, to be honest. Yet, say you have a work situation and you know what? Hey, if we tell this customer that this thing screwed up, we need to buy some time. You know what? Just don't, I'm not asking you to lie, but just try to avoid the truth, right? Just kind of buy us some time. So it'll kind of be sugar coated in a little bit, but the customer is going to ask you that direct question, and now you got to tap dance. And now you got to say, well, you know, it's okay. But these are little ways that we start sliding down this slippery slope of being out of alignment with our values. And it can become very easy, because when you do that one little thing, it's just a little thing. You told a little white lie, you kind of redirected them or distracted them or something like that. But you start doing that over and over, you know, on the inside that you're not lining up with your values. And that's going to cause a lot of problems for yourself. You're going to feel out of alignment. And the thing is the next time something like that happens, you're going to do it a little. And now your comfort zone is a little bit pushed out and pushed out and pushed out. And next thing you know, you're like looking in the mirror going, I don't even fucking recognize myself. How did I get to where I am? That's exactly what ended up causing me to go to therapy, because I was completely out of alignment with my values. And I was like, this is not who I am. I really need therapy. So it can be a good thing when you finally wake up to that and you're like, yeah, this is not who I want to be. And that's when you get to actually change the story. So the benefits of hitting rock bottom, or, you know, being so out of alignment with your own belief system, your own values, that you're like, I need to make a change. That is actually a good place. It sucks to be there, trust me. But when you finally get there and it's enough of a catalyst to get you to move forward and say, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going this way. I am doing something completely different. And that is really, really powerful. So, let's wait. How are we doing on TikTok? Are you guys liking this? Is this helpful? I'm not sure if there's anybody on Facebook. So, for those of you who don't know, I have started posting some of the videos. Thank you, Mark. Okay, I'm glad that you find it helpful. I have started posting some of my videos on my YouTube channel. I'm slowly but surely cleaning up some of the content that I had from before. So if you see something, you're like, what is this? It's like, okay, don't worry. Just go check out the last 3 videos that I've uploaded, and then you can listen to the replays. If there was things that I said in the live that you're like, oh, that was really good, but I can't remember exactly what she said, you can go back, you can take notes and do that kind of stuff, okay? So we're going to talk about our values. So there's certain behaviors, and again, this was kind of peaked because of something that I saw on TikTok today. Talking about, of all things, Trump, okay? So, and I want to talk about how our values will change and our beliefs will change based on different criteria or different information that is provided to us. So back in the day when Trump had the show Apprentice, I actually friggin' loved him. I loved how he operated, I loved his business mindset, and I thought he was great, and he was reasonable, and he was practical. And then he ran for president, and I went, what the actual fuck? And his beliefs now didn't align with what I believed, and I was like, why is he behaving that way? Why is he saying those certain things? And I was like, ew, ick, yuck. And all of a sudden, I went from loving him and liking what he was all about to now not liking him. And I was like, wait a minute, this is like, you know, and I actually had a thing where I refused to go to the United States while he was president. I went before and I went after, but while he was there, I refused to go to the States. That's how adamant I was. And I actually I cried when he got voted in as president, and I saw it as an end of times. And don't worry, it'll get to it where I've shifted some of the belief. So that's kind of how I felt. And I remember talking with a coworker. She was like, you know, and we're Canadian, so this doesn't really technically impact us, although it does, because anything that goes on with the US impacts the entire world. So it's important for us to pay attention and understand. And us as the Canadians, we were up there looking at our neighbors going, what the hell is going on, right? Anyway, So this stuff had happened, and I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine at work, and she was very pro-Trump. She's like, yes, he's in, this is great, this is awesome. And we actually had a really good discussion without hating each other, and we had extremely opposing views. And I thought that was actually a really good thing. She actually took the time to really try and understand where I was coming from, why I saw it as a bad thing. And I took the time to actually understand her point of view of, and I could give her some of the benefits of the doubt, and she could give me some of the benefits of the doubt and could see my perspective. In the end, we did agree to disagree. She still loved Trump. I still was not convinced. I was not closed. So it was a stalemate. But at the same time, I really liked the fact that we could actually have an intellectual, logical discussion talking about how we felt about different subject matters without it turning into, well, you're stupid, I hate you, blah, 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 that kind of high school bullshit, right? So, and I thought that was really, really good. And so now fast forward to, was it 2022? Yes. I went to a conference. It's probably good I didn't know who the main speaker was going to be. I may not have gone. But I remember sitting in the room. I was actually in VIP seats, and Trump was the actual speaker. And I'm like, oh my God, I cannot be here. I cannot believe I am at a Trump rally. What the hell happened here? And I'm like, I can't do this. I'm Canadian. This is crazy. But I sat there and I told myself, no, keep an open mind. See what you can actually learn from this. Because when we have the ability to actually learn from somebody who has completely opposing views to us, we don't like what they have to say, we don't respect what they believe in, but we take the time to actually listen, we are much more informed. That is much more in alignment with a loving, understanding perspective, because you know what? Sometimes they are right. And it's just the way that they are expressing it is not how we like the message delivered. And this is where it's important to understand, is it that the value isn't aligned, or is it how the principle, or is it the principle that's aligned and it's the personality that we don't like the way it's delivered, we don't like the way they talk, we don't like the way they look, so we shut our ears off, we don't stay open to receiving the message. And that causes a lot more problems because we shut down, we block ourselves off, we don't agree with it. And I'm not saying that you have to agree with them on everything that you dislike, but at least try to remain open enough to listen to a different perspective without it turning into a battle. And so there were 3 things that I actually got, and I was like, I actually like Trump again. So I went from loving him in The Apprentice to hating him, and then loving him again because, you know, the concept, it was a business conference, and it was the 10X Growth Con. And so listening to it, I got really 3 great takeaways from his talk, and I actually loved it quite a bit. And the first thing was talking a lot about how in social media, I don't think anybody has received more hate than Trump. It's like that just get bombarded. And it's like, you know, at the end of the day, you know, Trump is a human being. He's a dad, he's a husband, he's a, you know, father, son, brother, you know, all those kind of things. And it's like he has feelings, right? You know, even if I don't always agree with his ideals or the way he delivers his messages, you know, he still has feelings. And I remember, you know, Grant Cardone was asking him, like, how do you deal with that? It's like, you know, there's so much hate coming at you. And I will never forget his response. He goes, yeah, but there was also a lot of love. So it's a matter of what we choose to focus on. So we can focus on all the hate that's coming at us, all the criticism that's coming at us, or we can focus on the love that we have within us. And that is the thing that is more powerful. So I was like, damn, okay, I could agree with that. Then he talked about, and I'm going to butcher his name, the guy that runs North Korea. What's his name again? Kim? Oh, I can't remember. I'm having a blank here. Anyway, that's terrible. I should know these things. So, anyway, yeah, Kim Jong-un, right? Kim Jong-un? Okay, I think I got that right. Anyway, so he talked about how everybody was giving him so much flack, like how can you possibly, like, you know, be talking with this guy? Why are you collaborating with him? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, and I can't remember his exact words, so I'm not going to try and quote him. I don't want it to be false news or fake news or anything like that. But I'll talk about my takeaway from it. So the way that he explained it, to me, it made sense because of, in business, we often have to go talk with people that we don't actually like. We don't like how they operate, yet we can control our behavior. We can learn to win them over. We learn to close the deal. And it has nothing to do with their personality. We may not like how they operate, and, you know, but the deal is important to the company. So therefore we work towards and we close it. And so when he explained it like that, I was like, oh, that actually makes sense. And in fact, when I'm in business, they typically tend to give me the most problematic kind of person to deal with, that has got a short temper. They are unreasonable, they're irrational, and then they friggin' send me in to go calm that person down because for some reason I can talk to that person and they're not as volatile. So I'm like, I got that in common with Trump. Who knew? So I was like, okay, I can respect that. I can appreciate that value and see the importance of it, because the alternative, if you can't get along with somebody that is, you know, crazy and that could be potentially threatening, and you can't just talk it out, what's the alternative? Violence is going to happen. You don't want that. So the ability for him to actually be able to talk with this guy and get him to listen when the rest of the world can't, I got to respect that. I have got to respect that. And at the end of this talk, you're going to understand why respect is even more powerful than love. Okay? So now somebody could look at me and go, oh, you're a hypocrite. You're a bandwagon jumper. They can judge and criticize. It's like, oh, you used to love Trump and now you hate him. And it's like, oh, now you love him again? What the hell? Can't you make up your mind? No. New information was provided to me. And once I had that information, I made different decisions. We all do this. So be careful when somebody is calling you a hypocrite. What are they trying to control within you? Okay? So these are this is why I hate judgments. I hate judgments within myself. I don't like to, and this is why they say, judge not lest ye be judged, kind of thing. Because when you do that, it's going to come back to you, right? And it's a fear-based, and if you're in fear, you're going to try and control, you're going to try and manage the situation. Whereas when you're in a loving energy, you just trust that things work out, right? And that even if they don't work out, that you're being guided in a new direction, that you'll figure something else out. You don't worry and borrow trouble from the future or waste time, right? Easier said than done. I'm telling you this stuff is because this is stuff I have to work on all the time. I have to practice and implement these tools. So now the third thing I wanted to tell you that I got from Trump is that he talked about processes and systems that were in place in the government that just were no longer relevant. And I'm going to give this little story of how there was a woman that she was cooking dinner and she had a ham and she cut the ham in half and she put it in the pan and did all the prep work. And her granddaughter had asked her, Grandma, why do you cut the ham in half? And she's like, I don't know. It's just the way my mom did it. And so she asked her mom, why do we cut the ham in half? She's like, I don't know, it's just the way my mom did it. And the mom went and asked her mom, and she's like, yeah, I started doing that because the pan was too small. So nobody went and updated the SOP because everybody was working with a larger pan. It didn't need to be cut in half. But that happens a lot of times within business, and it definitely happens within government. So what Trump did is he went in and he tore a bunch of stuff apart and said, these systems, these processes don't work. They're ineffective. They are not relevant for what's going on today. And he tore a bunch of those up, and it actually helped make improvements. So this can be applied in our own current life. There's things that we're operating on, that things that we are doing just because we do them. And sometimes our SOPs, our standard operating procedures, need to be updated. And there's been many times, and I could relate to this particular experience because there's been many times I've gone to different departments, I've gone to different companies, I've gone in, and the first thing you start looking at the SOPs and you're like, I went to go do this and I can't find that in there. Oh yeah, we don't do that anymore. We don't use that system, we use this. But nobody went and updated the SOP. Why? Because it was just a tiny little change at the time. And it's like, oh yeah, I'll get around to it, right? I'll get around to it. It's not that big of a deal. So we tend to minimize any changes that are going on rather than recognizing what's going on with them and being able to, and I'm not saying go ahead and, update every little SOP, but recognize that there's these little micro steps that kind of get us off the path. And it's usually little micro steps that get us back on the path. So being patient with ourselves as we're going through this process of change, because if we make too big of a change, it usually causes that backlash thing. And then we change back, and then we start to believe that we can't change rather than focusing on, yes, we can change. Now, if you want to make those big leaps and big changes, know that you're going to fail a lot. And if you're okay with that, you've built up some toughness, some resilience within you, and you can do that. You can also build that toughness and resilience by jumping, falling, and doing all that over and over again. You're going to become a little bit tougher, right? And your ability to withstand that is going to be your determination of whether or not you're successful. Now, that being said, there is different times where you're going to have to take a look at, is it time to make the change, or is it time to stick with it? And that is always a balancing act. I'm going to give a little story of how this can be applied in leadership, business, your family life. So I'm going to give like a Christmas example. So say you have a long-standing Christmas tradition. You always do this one thing, and every year you do that. And, as the family grows and develops, you get new people get married, they have kids, and all this kind of stuff starts to happen. Yet everybody's going along with the family tradition. Why? Because it's tradition and you just do it. But deep down, some people were not wanting that tradition to continue on. They wanted to create new traditions. So you might end up having a dividing line. You have, say there's 10 people in the team or in the family or whatever, and you have 5 people that want to follow the tradition because they find it comforting, they find it happy, they find it, they're good memories, right? And then you've got the other 5 that, they're like, no, I hate doing this. It drives me crazy. I don't want to do this. I want to, go tobogganing at Christmas, or I want to go to a midnight mass, or I want to do something different. I want to go feed the hungry, or do a Christmas dinner for a family, or something like that. So you'll have this dichotomy happening of tradition and change, and being able to balance those two things is where a leadership decision comes in, right? So how do you decide which one is right? Because, tradition is great, And following that gives a sense of stability, a sense of comfort, a sense of knowing and expecting what's going to happen. And then the other side, you have a lot of change, right? Where it's unknown and it's scary, but it's also exhilarating, and it could end up becoming the new tradition. I've seen families where they're like, you know what, I'm done with the snow. I've had enough with it. Our new tradition is we're going down to Mexico for Christmas. We're doing something different because that's what they want to be able to do. So it's managing the dichotomy of balancing out tradition, keeping things the same, versus changing things up. And how do you know? So you end up having a foot in both worlds. And sometimes there's no right or wrong answer. There's just little corrections that we kind of have to make. And making some of those changes, especially when it impacts a lot of people, has to be done at a slower pace rather than a faster pace. If it's just you and you can persevere through the pain of the change, then it's fine. But when you have a lot of people involved and a lot of mixed emotions, things can get really volatile really fast. And the thing is you can go, oh no, you ever been in a company where like, no, this is the way we always do it. This is how it's done. You follow the process, don't deviate from the process, blah, 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 blah. And I agree that there's structures and processes, and then there's also times that those structures and processes need to be torn apart. They need to be blown up. They need to be revamped, revised. Okay? Example, look at Blockbuster and Netflix. When Netflix kind of came around and they were the change, they were the new thing, there was hesitation. It's like, well, we're not doing it that way. We have this whole experience where people come in, they pick up the movies, and that's how we do things. We're not changing. And look where Blockbuster is now. Some of you might even go, what the hell's Blockbuster? It's been that long, right? So, but hopefully you know what Netflix is, right? But it's our inability to recognize when we need to change that can get us into trouble. And not recognizing those change and denying the pain that's being caught up is where the problem comes in. And oftentimes that ends up aligning with our values, because just like the example that I gave with Trump, it's like sometimes you get new information, but sometimes we don't want to make the changes necessary because it's like, yeah, but I said I liked him, so now I gotta like him, but I found out information that made me not like him, and now I don't. So that's why I say although love is the most powerful, is the only thing that's real, the highest form and expression of love to me is respect. And here's why. Because love, it's very easy for that switch to flip to hate, which is fear. Okay? And it's really easy for us to get sucked into believing fear is real, that the hate is real, versus the love being real. And the thing is the truth is if you truly love somebody, you would never deliberately harm them. So hate is an illusion, and we're stuck in a dream state, and it's a nightmare. And if we act out on that, then we will make our nightmares realities. So refusing to change when we're needing to change is a lot of times the problem. And we don't want to let go when we know that we should. And so we'll stick around because it's tradition or it's not too bad. And you know what? It could be worse. I mean, hey, yeah, I don't like, when we have to go to this family gathering and that family gathering, and we're running around on Christmas, and you're driving in bad weather and you have to be there and you're tired and all that kind of stuff, and what you really want to do is just have Christmas with your own family kind of thing. So there could be all kinds of things that come up, and you have to balance out the tradition versus the change, right? This can also come up with more challenging things. So now, this is going to be a bit of a touchy subject, but this is a personal share. So let's talk about divorce. So I grew up, in my situation, divorce was commonplace. In fact, if there were families that stayed together, they were the anomaly. They were the weird ones. Okay? Now, I believe in marriage. I believe that it should be lifelong. However, as I'm saying that, I am also divorced. And I'm currently living with my ex. So, long story on that one. That being said, the perspective of divorce can be a bit neutral. Okay? So while I believe in marriage, there are times where if you have certain pieces of information that there are circumstances where it's okay. And that's why we have it. Because otherwise it was till death do us part and people were killed so that they could get out of the arrangement. Now we have this convenience of divorce. And although it's not good, it is painful. It can be just as painful if you stay in a marriage that you're unhappy with because you stayed for the kids, or you stayed because you're too afraid to leave, or you stay because you cannot afford to leave financially. Those kind of things, it depends on where your perspective, your starting perspective is. If the marriage is a really, really happy one and you're like, this is the dream life, maybe as a kid you saw your parents and this was the dream life, this was the hope, and you're like, oh, this is wonderful. It's just like, I don't know, a perfect movie, right? And so you have the perspective that divorce is really bad. It's really painful. And it is if you're coming from that perspective. And so when they divorce and how it's handled during the divorce can shatter your whole life. It could shatter your dreams. It can shatter your trust, your belief in things. And I can understand why divorce can be an extremely painful thing, even if you're not the one getting divorced. I know that because I watched a friend get divorced and I was devastated because I based my entire hope and belief that good marriages can happen on their relationship. That's a lot of friggin' pressure to put on somebody, right? And so when they divorced, I was like, what the hell? Like my whole world shattered. Sure, you can say that. So my whole world shattered when that happened, and I had doubts and fears. So because of that, when I got married, I absolutely didn't want to be divorced. I wanted to do it right. And guess what? I'm divorced. It's like, fuck. However, there were little things that I was ignoring over a long period of time that were causing me pain and causing my partner pain. And because of that, even though we tried to address it, it didn't actually work, right? So, that being said, I'm not saying that things can't be fixed. But the problem is he came from a family where his parents stayed together 56 years. That's quite an achievement. I came from a family where it was a blessing when the divorce happened. It was, oh my God, thank God we don't have to be around that environment. So it was a very different perspective because my mom needed to get out of those contracts. She needed to get out of those relationships. They were very abusive for us, for her, for us. But she was so trying to have that perfect family life, that picture perfect image, the husband, the wife, a boy and a girl, perfect kids, right? Both kids were well behaved, got good grades, and it was a fucking nightmare behind closed doors. So us, it was just the three of us, my mom, my brother, and I, that was my dream life. That was bliss. That was happiness. That was the perfect family to me because we didn't have this abuse coming from outside. So perspectives, depending on where your starting point is, you can have a very different perspective about the same subject matter. And with that, it's kind of like it's the two different sides of the same coin.
So it's a matter of our beliefs of what we put on it based on our experiences. So this whole conversation today is examples of how you can shift your perspective. And when you can shift your perspective to see where is the love in that experience, can you focus on what was right about that experience versus what was wrong about that experience? Because I can tell you, two people staying in a relationship that don't truly love each other or are just doing it to go through the motions and don't have that full passionate connection, it can be very, very painful for both parties. So being able to change and make those changes where necessary, although it's extremely painful, it is the most loving thing that you can do for yourself and for others. And I'm not advocating that, you know what, you should just get divorced. That's the solution for everything. No, I believe in trying to work things out. I believe in being able to talk things out. However, at some point, you do have to make a call. And how I base my decision is that I'm blocking my partner from being able to actually find somebody who can truly love him fully. And he's doing the same for me. So this is a win for both of us, even though it's painful. Does that make sense? And I know that's hard because he helps me. So we're really good friends, and you don't have to become enemies. That's the problem. That's where divorce becomes extremely painful, especially if there's children involved, if there's brutal, that you start treating each other badly now because you're not in love. That's not love. You never had love if you start deliberately trying to harm the other party and go out of the way. You just don't do that, right? But that's my value. That's my belief, that I will never lash out deliberately. I may react and then I will make amends. So I may have a bad moment, but I will never deliberately go out of my way to harm somebody. I just won't do it. I don't believe in revenge because I believe in karma. So these are value belief systems. It's like, there's a hierarchy that you have within yourself, and knowing where and what can shift some of those beliefs. Just like I had the ability to shift my belief on Trump based on new information being provided, right? So even if there is a separation, a divorce, or leaving a company, it's like you never leave a company on bad terms, yet people feel it's perfectly fine to leave a marriage on bad terms. Why? Why do you think it's okay with somebody you actually loved to all of a sudden start treating them like they're the scum of the earth? No, can you not still recognize the love that you had for them at that time? Even if you separate, even if you go different ways? There's no excuse for bad behavior. Now, you can react negatively, and that's on us to take a look at our own behavior as to why we've behaved that way and clean up our own side of the street. Don't worry about what other people are doing to you. Only focus on the stuff that you are doing. That's it. That's all we have control over. And when we fix that, the world becomes a much, much better place. Okay? And this is why I say respect is the highest form of love, because when I think you actually respect somebody, when you respect them, you admire them, you look up to them, even if you don't like them, you're going to do the right thing. This is why respect is so much more powerful than love. Love can sometimes be fickle. It can flip the switch to fear, and we get stuck in that illusion, and then we start behaving badly because, well, I thought you loved me, and how could you do that to me? Nobody does anything to us. They are just doing their thing. Maybe they have incorrect coping mechanisms, even if they're really, really bad ones. But if I can still have love, compassion, understanding for the people who have abused me over the years, then I can encourage you, somebody that you actually loved, that you do the right thing. Respect them. At the very least, respect them. You may not have to like them anymore. You may find their behavior despicable. You may find that it doesn't align with your values, that you have to separate for whatever reason. Maybe you have to leave to protect the kids. Maybe you have to leave for whatever reasons. For your own self-love, right? For your own self-care, for your own mental health. Those are all good reasons to separate. Now, if the other person takes that as a signal and does the work and tries to correct some behavior, that's fine. But if they have to be somebody completely different in order to be in a relationship with you, then that's not a good thing either, right? You should be able to be at a place where you are both able to be authentically yourselves, the good, the bad, the ugly, and you still work through that and grow together with that. If you stop, or one person stops growing, or you guys, when you grow, you go in different paths, that's okay too. That is okay. And it's a matter of having gentleness. And one of the things that I love about my in-law family is that they do have this feeling of love, and that even with the changing dynamics of relationships, that, you know, a couple that were together, they ended up catering the wedding for the other person that they married. And I'm like, that is beautiful. That is beautiful to have that kind of love and integrity, that even if you're not with the person, you want their best happiness, that you want them to be as happy as possible, whether that's with you or with somebody else. That is powerful. That is love, that is respect, and that is honoring the person that you're with, even if you're not with them. So that is, I think, so it's a matter of making sure that your values are aligned. And I want to talk about the difference between value and processes. So two people can have very same values, like I value work, okay? However, you can have two different processes, right? I also, I had some good examples with this. So, yes, now I remember what I was going to do. Okay, so in this town that I used to live in it was called Brampton, and they used to have this marketing sign up that they were trying to draw more people into the city, that all roads lead to Brampton, and it was major highways. So our major highways up here are freeways. They're Highway 400, 401, 407, right? Those are the major arteries for traffic and stuff like that. And all of those roads led into Brampton. And so if you imagine that there's all these different roads, depending on what perspective that you're coming from, which position you're coming from, if, you know, Highway 410 ran north and south, but if you were east and west, well, like, how do I get there, right? I'm not on that road. And the roads are similar to processes, right? There's many different ways to get to the same result. And oftentimes we end up arguing about the process, yet we all still believe in the same result. So be cautious in when you're arguing with coworkers, when you're arguing with spouses, of, are you arguing over the value and your values aren't aligned, or are you arguing over the process? And if it's a process issue, then I encourage you to be much more open-minded and to see that there's different ways to do things. And I used to do this a lot in training with training people on SOPs and systems. Let's say Excel spreadsheets, for example. There's many different ways to do the same things. You can go through the drop-down menus, you can do a right click, and you can select from that way to find the same function. They have different functionalities. There's ribbons and all that kind of stuff. And I used to be the kind of person, be like, no, you have to right click. I don't want you to go through the drop-down menu, right? And that is just so friggin' nitpicky. It's like, I ugged myself. It's like, that is a terrible thing to do to somebody, but I was so rigid in my way. I've kind of gone to the other extreme where I'm very relaxed now, But at the time, I was super rigid. No, you have to do it this exact way in this exact method. And then once I can see that you do it in that method, if you can show me a better way, I'm open for it. But in this meantime, you must follow this process. So I get it. I get it. And I hate it when people do that to me, because I'm very like, I'm the kind of person, I like to write the process. I don't follow the process so much. But I'm the one that actually creates the structure oftentimes, but I'm not very good at following structure. But it makes me really, really good in being able to just throw me in a situation that's a shit show, and I will go put some structure in place, put it enough that we can take somebody more junior and bring them in and plop them in because I've got an SOP in place. Follow this. In fact, even after I left companies, 10 years after I left, they were still using those same processes. Now, I'm sure if I was in that company, I would have looked at those and revised those processes on a more regular basis to make sure that they were still optimized, because there's so many things that happen, and especially in business, there's so many things that happen on a daily basis, yet often we don't change how we operate. And the problem that we put the process in place to solve maybe is changed or is no longer a problem, or we're using a different system, or you know what, that's not the most effective way. That was just the most effective way we could think of at the time. And now we have new information. We can do it better by doing this. You know, we now have an IT guy that can create a report for us or something, rather than us manually looking this stuff up. And this SOP is showing people how to manually look stuff up. So, but it's not easy to get people to let go of their tradition of following that particular process. This is why those changes need to be done in small increments. None of us is immune to this. And although I can talk about this, I am also extremely resistant when somebody tries to get me to change my process. And you can be aware of that, and you can annoy the hell out of yourself by knowing that you need to make certain changes, and yet you don't do them, right? And it's because we haven't done enough of the inner work to understand what is the fear, because the only reason we're hanging on to that process is there's fear of the unknown. And sometimes having more communication, more information helps us make that shift and helps us allow to go to a place and embrace that change. And this is why there are change management professionals like myself that come into play that help people make that shift in the change to embrace what it is. So sometimes it's usually an emotional issue versus a technical issue. So a lot of times companies will implement systems and then they don't get fully utilized because people are resistant to the change, and they underestimated the value of people's emotions and also the cost and impact if you don't actually address those. So understanding this and making sure that we're not fighting over process when we all have the same value, we have the same belief, making sure that our beliefs and our values are aligned. And it's only when our beliefs and our values don't align that we need to look at that. I'm still not saying that you need to leave that company if your beliefs or values. You want to still try and talk it out. You want to communicate, but you also need to be able to, can you listen to somebody who has completely opposing viewpoints and you don't agree with those? And that is really, really challenging when you believe that this process, this system is the path, is the right highway to take, but not understanding that sometimes people are coming from different perspectives. You're coming from the south and you're going north, and this is the right path, but somebody else is coming from the east and they're going to the west, right? So that's what we need to understand. This is what we need to embrace, and make sure that we're not harming people just because they don't align with our processes, versus maybe they align with our values and we're all getting to the same goal, the same purpose, and the same intention. Okay. And then sometimes if they don't truly align, they don't align on process, they don't align on values, then that's where you may need to take separate paths. Doesn't necessarily mean forever. Maybe, people just need to kind of go a different path to come back around to see where they needed to be, and they learn the value of certain things. Maybe they needed to see that it is possible for the road to run east and west or north and south, right? Depending on where they were coming from. So with that, guys, I think we're going to wrap it up for today. I hope you guys found that helpful. I will be uploading this onto YouTube, so you can check out my YouTube channel, Coach Tina B 125. Is that what it is? Hang on just a sec. Let me double check what I know I changed the name, so I want to make sure that I give you the right name. Yeah, at Coach Tina B 125 is my YouTube channel. Okay, so you can check that out there. And thank you, Mark, for coming back. I really appreciate that you keep coming back for this and that you're finding value in this. Please share this with anybody else that you think might get value out of this, and we'll come back again tomorrow. Okay, all right, guys, I hope you have a great night, and we will talk to you later. Bye.